Hello and welcome back to the Content Bite. We're a podcast with freelancers who use their words to make money. I'm Rachel Smith, founder of the Jobs Board and freelance community Rachel's List, and I'm also a journalist, copywriter and content producer. My co-host this week and every week is the lovely Lynn Testoni. How are you this week, Lynn? It's been a few days between scones, and I'm thinking I want more.
Hi, Rachel. Yeah, we've had a couple of scone dates lately, haven't we? It's been fun. It's so nice to be seeing each other in person a bit more regularly.
I know. After so many months on Zoom, we can actually catch up because we're allowed to. Sorry about everyone in Melbourne.
Poor Melbourne.
Yeah.
But hello, everyone who's tuning in. As Rachel said, I'm Lynn Testoni. I'm also a writer, content creator and a journalist. And this week we're talking about onboarding new clients. And I think it's a great topic because I've noticed that with COVID-19, still continuing, business for me has been a bit different. And I've had a lot of new clients. And even because some of my older clients are taking breaks or going in new directions, because there's heaps of change around now, isn't there, Rachel?
Yep, I've noticed the same things. And plus I'm doing sort of different types of work sometimes, and experience has really taught me that you have to set things up the right way from the start. So that means your onboarding systems, which sounds kind of wanky and a bit techie, but is really your systems for locking in a client and starting the project, is something that you want to have watertight from the start. So we're going to talk a bit about that. Yeah,
exactly. Because I think it's something that we've both learned the hard way. So we're trying to stop have you not make the same mistakes, because I think the most important thing to do is start with expectations, isn't it? Managing their expectations right from the start. And whenever I see a post on the Gold Group or another freelancer group with client problems, they usually start with, I didn't say something at the beginning and now it's a bigger problem.
Yep.
Because you do get better with time. I've made a few mistakes at the start, but I always start a new client relationship with a short, friendly email and a summary of our conversation. I also often, I send out a briefing sheet and just to get an idea of the scope of the project before I start quoting and go forward. What about you, Rachel?
Mm-hmm. Yes, very similar. Look, I've made a lot of mistakes with client projects because for years I just kind of, I came from print where it was very defined by the editor, and suddenly you're thrown into client work and you have to learn a whole new way of working. And I think that I probably flew by the seat of my pants a bit longer than I should have, and I would just hope for the best. But things can go wrong, not majorly, but sometimes majorly, but just even little things that waste your time and waste your money. So it's really important to get those systems down pat as soon as you can. And you still make mistakes. I still make mistakes now. So you're always sort of learning and tweaking your systems, and whether that's, tweaking your contact form to weed out the tire kickers who have no money but just, kind of take up your time sending stuff through your contact form, or you might, tweak your contracts to ensure you're covering off on things like how many revisions you offer and when those revisions cut off. I mean, those are just two examples, but overall you want to make your onboarding systems as good as they can be, because it can really save you a heap of time and ensure you're not in a world of pain down the track. So
it's so much easier to have those awkward conversations at the beginning, isn't it?
Because
there's nothing worse than saying, a month or two, oh, by the way, we shouldn't be doing this. If you start at the beginning, so much better.
And you've got nothing to lose at the beginning, because either one of you could walk away at any time. So it's really fine to bring up all those niggly things. But I'm actually redoing my website at the moment, and I'm working on a bit of more of a streamlined onboarding system, which is going to have a really comprehensive contact form that gives me info about the client and about their project and about their budget, which saves a lot of kind of back and forth if you have that information up front when you start. I'm also going to put in a calendar booking function for client calls, which I've never had before, but I think that would be really good.
I've logged on to Calendly.
Oh, yeah.
Calendly, which we used when we booked in John Espirian.
Yeah.
He uses it, and it's the best thing. I had somebody trying to book in a call with me, and they were in a different time zone. They were in San Francisco. So I set up a Calendly account, which is free, And I just send them a link and it plugs into my normal calendar and they can see when I'm free. And it saves those sort of awkward conversations saying, oh, I can do Tuesday 10 a.m. And then they come back and say, oh, I can't do Wednesday. And then,
Yep.
they can just see all your calendar. And it was great in a different time zone as well. It was
Yep. It's
so
so
much
back to
simpler.
that time saving thing, and it's all done for you with a clever little bit of technology.
It makes you look professional too.
I think so as well. And the other thing that can make you look professional is having a briefing template, which I've got, and I've worked on that over and over for years, honed it, made it, and I still tweak it if there's a certain client that doesn't need a certain section in it. But I have this one template which I send to new clients to fill out, or I help them fill it out over the phone, just so we have a really clear picture of what they need, what their goals are, and that sort of thing. And then after that, if we're in agreement on the scope and what's required, I send a contract with everything outlined. I think we're going to go into contracts a little bit more. But if it's a new project, say a copywriting project, I'll also send a deposit invoice to lock in the project. Yeah.
Yep. It's similar to what I do. I have a briefing form. So I had one that I bought from Kate Toon's website.
Oh, yeah.
Which she has a few templates and I've adapted that. I personalised it and then I've adapted, as you say, I put in questions and each one's slightly different. It depends where the call comes from because a lot of agencies, when they're briefing me, they have a form.
Yes.
So I go with theirs. It's usually, I only use the form if it's somebody that hasn't got a clear brief, and that helps me. And then I have my own contract that I've also developed and tweaked over the years, and I sort of summarise, I put their brief in that contract so it makes it clear. The other thing I put in is all the deliverables. And really listed out exactly things like what form, whether it's in Microsoft Word, any sort of dates, all the real practicalities of it. So it's really clear and I can always go back to them and I say how many revisions it includes and that all does work. I also like the next step is I talk about communication because different clients communicate differently. Some just like phone calls. I do a lot of websites for builders and builders are all about the phone call. But a lot of people like emails and I think that works. I've also noticed some clients sort of tend to email late at night and some in the morning. I even have one client who just loves WhatsApp. So she sends me everything on WhatsApp. I'm happy to be flexible about the method, but I like to make it clear from the start. So I ask, if they're an email person or a phone. And
That's a good idea. I like that idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it makes it easier. And also, I try and set some boundaries for me. Like I never answer phone calls or texts after hours or weekends unless it's on an emergency. My WhatsApp client, she tends to send me lots of WhatsApp messages late at night, but I don't reply. I reply the next morning when it's a good time for me. And sometimes I do work weekends and that's my choice. And but I never email anything through until the Monday morning just because I don't want to have a conversation on the weekend. I just want to get the work done. Yeah.
Yep.
I also, the last couple of years, I've often set up Google Sheets with a work in progress document for regular or retainer clients, and that keeps everything up to date and accessible. And say what you like about Google, and people have strong views on it, Rach.
Yes.
But I haven't met a client who can't access Google Sheets or documents or learn how. It's pretty basic, so that's
It's a first time for everything.
Maybe, but because sometimes some of my clients aren't very technically able, so they're the ones that you text or you phone. I've used Basecamp a few times, which I like Basecamp, but it's expensive unless you use it all the time. Few agencies have Basecamp and it works well if there's lots of people involved. What about you? How do you communicate with your clients?
Yeah, so when I'm getting the client on board, it really depends on what they want and whether there's a lot of info gathering. In that case, we might, and we both need to, do the info gathering. We might use a Trello board that's specifically for that client.
You love Trello.
I do, but I'm actually loving Evernote more. So I'll have notebooks now in Evernote for each client, and then I can add things to Evernote and then share the notebook with the client. So I really do like that. But yeah, I'm like you. Some of my clients have looped me into Basecamp, and I don't mind it. But with others, I'm also working like entirely in a CMS, like Gather Content. So all the communication happens in that CMS. Or there might be a CMS that the client has had purpose built, I'm finding, and then all the messages, all the emails, all the edits go entirely through the CMS. And actually, I have no problem doing that. I like learning those new CMS platforms and any new systems, because then I feel like I have that skill for the future and I can say, yes, I've worked on Gather Content.
And the more you use, the more confident you get, because they're all got some similarities.
Yeah.
And it's actually interesting to work, and it's usually better to work with the one they've set up. Never try and impose your own system on the client. Always go with them.
That's
Never
right.
works.
So I'm always, basically going with what their system is, which I don't mind doing at all. But for projects with small businesses, I find it's up to me to have a really strong system in place and to use that with the client. So that will be either, like I mentioned, Trello, Evernote, or a good project management platform that I'm using at the moment is Lighthouse. And that costs around $15 a month, and you can loop people into tasks and you can set milestones and sort of click things off and have to-do lists, and it's bloody brilliant. I love it. So I sort of do a combination of those things and email.
And then I guess you have to think about roles and responsibilities. Like, I like to set these down in my quote and scope of work right from the start. Although I have to say, I don't find a lot of clients read the small print. They usually just go straight to the price. But so I like to think I'm pretty clear, but sometimes clients just hear what they want to hear. And that's why you look at scope creep right from the start. We've talked a bit about scope creep before, but when they start asking me to do things beyond the scope, that's when I push back, refer them back to the contract, and then mention the scope of work contract. And then I might send through a quote for the extra work. So if they say, can you start sourcing images? And I think that wasn't really part of the scope, I say, happy to do that. And I'm always happy to do it. But then I say, and I usually charge XX dollars for this sort of work. And then either they say, sure, or they go, oh, okay, we'll do that. And then it just makes it clear. Otherwise, once you say yes to a couple of images, somehow you end up sourcing 10 every month, and the whole job changes.
Yep. I think it really, and that's the thing, especially coming from a print background, where often the scope was pretty well defined. Although I have been in situations with editors where I was suddenly sourcing the images and I was doing radio interviews to promote the article.
Yeah.
And none of that was in the original, story commission. So it's like, that to me is scope creep. It's hard to push back if you want regular work from that editor, because if you say no, you're basically on the blacklist, I reckon. But when it comes to a client, it's really up to you, I agree, to take that time, nail down the scope really specifically, because I think you'll kick yourself later if you don't do it and you get into a situation where you're suddenly getting all these other little tasks and you haven't been really clear when you were setting it out. I mean, like I mentioned before, I've had clients return and want changes on the project, sometimes, months after the project has wrapped. And I think that that's a real loophole that you can close at the contract stage, but often we don't think to do it. We just don't think that a client's going to come back 6 months later and go, actually, can you just do this, this and this? And, but it does happen. And then you're stuck trying to dig back into a project that you thought was done and dusted, and you're not getting paid any extra to kind of do that. So I would always try and consider, worst case scenarios. Is that client a little bit high maintenance? Do you know how they work? Do you know if they're going to be coming back to you and requesting this, that and the other? So try and plug all those gaps at the contract stage if you can. This should be part of your onboarding process. So for clients who might return and expect work long after the project's wrapped, if you suspect that could be a problem, you could have a clause in your contract that says you're available for 30 days after the project for any revisions, and then after that, any revisions are considered as a new project, or something a bit more legally and concise. But you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think it's all about being reasonable. Like, it wouldn't worry me if somebody came back in 6 months and said, do you mind, COVID-19's happened, do you mind just tweaking this section? That's fine. But if they want it totally rewritten, that's a whole new project. So, things happen and we get that. But yeah, there's a limit.
Yeah.
And Yeah, and I've had clients who've asked me to do something, and then they've said, "This is great. We really love the new website copy. Now, do you mind just tweaking this for my LinkedIn profile, or for this and that?" And it just suddenly keeps going. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
So
So
the
good
next point,
communication.
it's all about communication.
Yeah.
And I guess the next point in that line is to talk about invoicing. And I tell you, it's so much easier to talk about money before work's done and before you've sent an invoice.
And it
So,
is part of that onboarding process, isn't it? You talk money, you nail down the money, you talk about
yeah,
whether it's a retainer and what the, deposit amount is, or, all of that comes as part of that process.
it does. And with smaller or one-off clients, I usually ask for a 50% deposit before I start work. With corporates, that's tricky, but it's a good idea to ask about their accounts payable system, because they're the sort of things that you find later and to your detriment. You might find that you have to have invoices in on the 15th of the month to be paid that month, and if you miss it on the 15th, like if you send an invoice on the 16th, you won't get paid to the end of the next month. And so there's all those things that are good to know right at the beginning.
Yeah.
One of my corporate clients needed to set me up on their account system, which took forever. They're a great client, but it took, their accounts payable system is really arduous. I had to take a photocopy and a scan of my checkbook to prove my
That
my
sounds so
BSB
dodgy
number.
in itself. I just, that's like
I
saying, oh,
know.
here's a photocopy of my passport and my credit card.
I know. I was like, oh my goodness. Sometimes they also want things like paperwork they don't ask you for until you put in your invoice. Things like I've had people who want my ABN, or they want insurance. If you have to do insurance, they want a certificate of currency. It's always good to set yourself up on their system first.
I've had that situation with a couple of clients where it was a massive punish getting on the system. But it's been my experience that once you're on that system, you get paid overnight sometimes. Do you
Yeah,
find that?
I do. I mean, Bauer Media, we talked about this before. It takes a bit of a palaver to get up on then when you've got to do an electronic signature and everything. But once you're on, it's the best system of all the media companies, because they give you a vendor login, and you can always check on your where your invoices are up to, whether they're waiting approval, when they're going to be paid. And it saves you a lot of grief. And some other companies do that as well, and I think it's really good. Some of my clients need purchase orders, and so when they commission it, I usually get a purchase order then, and then that makes it sense. There was one company I worked for, AAP, got to love them, no longer, but
Are
if
they
you
back?
invoice
They
by
are back.
Wednesday, they pay on, pardon?
They're back, I think.
They're around.
Yeah.
Some are around, but I think it's a different company now, so I don't know if the
Okay.
system's the same. But I used to invoice by Wednesday and they'd pay me on Friday.
Oh, I love
So
that.
I really liked that. That was great. There are some media organisations that only pay on publication, and I know you've worked for a few of them. I've worked for one or two. I don't really like that, but what do you find?
Yes. So, I think it's really important payment as part of your onboarding systems to figure out payment, figure out what their payment terms are, and negotiate then if you want different payment terms. Sometimes you'll be successful, sometimes you won't be, but always a good idea to do that right at the start. I'm a bit like you. I charge that deposit fee upfront for copywriting clients and small business sort of projects. And sometimes for content marketing clients, but generally not if they've come through agencies. You're getting paid after the work has been done.
Yep.
But I think charging that deposit invoice, coming from print, this is quite a new thing for journos who've moved into the content marketing and copywriting spaces. And I think it can feel very weird getting money up front. We're just not used to that, but it is standard practice, and most clients are fine to pay a commencement fee of some kind, and just to lock their project in and to ensure that they're on your schedule. So
I've never had anyone question it. The first couple of times I asked, I was nervous about asking, but I've never had anyone question it. As you say, it's standard practice.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty much the key in onboarding. But if you have any questions, definitely drop us a line via our Facebook group or Instagram, or because we can definitely cover more about this.
And you've got some great things in your toolkit as well, don't you? A lot of templates and stuff, which are really good. Learn from our mistakes.
Yes, absolutely. So if you don't have a contract of any kind and you're thinking, I really need a contract, you do. You absolutely do. And so we've got a number of different contracts that cover a range of, freelancing scenarios. And we have a great special for our podcast listeners on our Core Blimey contract bundle at Rachel's List. So you can use the code Core Blimey, $10 at checkout to get $10 off until the end of August.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rach.
So head to rachelslist.com.au
really
and we'll put the show notes in and we'll have a link to that contract bundle as well if you wanted to check it out.
And you can join us on Facebook at The Content Bite, or you can email us with any questions, things about contracts or anything you'd like us to cover in future episodes at thecontentbite@gmail.com.
Yes, and we will have more episodes for you. We're coming to the end of this season soon, aren't we? Season 4. Oh my gosh!
I know it's been almost a year, Rachel. Weekly podcast for a year. It's amazing.
A year of fun and joy on the airwaves with Lynn and Rachel.
Yes, exactly. All right. Till next week.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye.